Alright, fuck it, let's do it. Fuck it, we're going live. Alright. Screw it. I'm doing this live, right? So, today we are doing Anarchist Weapons Wednesday live at 5. And this is my first go with this. I'm trying to use OBS, and hopefully I got most of it figured out. I'm not entirely sure, but you know what? I'm going to sure give her hell anyway. Keep her moving. Let's do this thing. Alright. So, here's what we are currently looking at for today. I got a couple of laws in Pennsylvania that make absolutely no sense to anybody who knows anything. I have some additional legislators that are all but screaming because there are 21 guns stolen in Nashville over the course of the past 7 days. We have a JPMorgan hearing in Congress. I got an update on the weapons ban, the magazine ban in California. Threw in a bonus last minute, the new thing in Illinois that will boggle your mind. And of course, last but not least, I got my Florida Man of the Week. So let's get rolling, shall we? Alright, so starting out with the gun rights spiel that I'm going to be doing pretty much constantly here. So there is a couple of new gun laws heading to the state of Pennsylvania. The first one that you're going to be looking at is Act 79. So that goes into effect today. And basically what it says is that if somebody decides that they want to put a some kind of a restraining order out on you, that you are automatically banned from owning guns. No court process needed. I mean, technically, yes, it does take a little bit of court process where you need to prove that there's a reasonable suspicion that you might be dangerous in order for you to actually get the protection order, right, that this is talking about. However, the important thing here is that there's no due process before the guns get taken, so all it really takes is a pissed off ex-girlfriend to go, hey, he threatened me. She can't necessarily prove it, but that's enough. And then somebody loses their weapons. And if you think that that's not going to get abused like hell. And keep in mind, Donald Trump fully supports things like this. What did he say? He said, take the weapons first, and then we'll worry about due process later. So don't think that you are immune to any of this here, Republicans, because I'm going to rip on you guys too. Like, you're completely anti-gun. The NRA totally supported what he said. They supported his bump stock ban, which, by the way, a federal judge just refused to fully block. I mean, they're just gonna take your guns at the drop of a hat. That's all they need, and it's just one of those next steps, right, for you to lose your gun rights. On top of that, in Pennsylvania, you have the new city ordinance in Philadelphia, or sorry, not Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, that the mayor just signed into law yesterday that is basically making illegal to buy, sell, carry, or even possess, quote, assault weapons. Now, if you know me, you know that I am not somebody who believes that the term assault weapon should actually exist. The term assault rifle certainly exists. The term assault rifle applies directly to any firearm that is select fire, which is a big one, select fire, and fires a full or a not full powered rifle cartridge and not pistol cartridge, an intermediate cartridge. So something like 5.56, which is the 5.56 NATO. That's what the M4 fires. The 7.62 Russian, which is what the AK fires. Those are considered intermediate cartridges. The round that if I wasn't live, I could go ahead and look up and seem like I completely remembered off the top of my head that the Sturmgewehr 44 fired, the STG 44, that was also intermediate. And in fact, the STG was the very first ever assault rifle. And it's still a really good assault rifle, side note. But so that's what you're looking at there. The definition, though, of an assault weapon that most of these people want to use involves like a threaded muzzle or a removable magazine over 30 rounds or 30 rounds or whatever, over 10 usually, I think. You can attach optics to it. You can attach foregrips and things. It's got Picatinny rail, which has existed since 1913. Picatinny rail, by the way. So you're talking about a whole bunch of things that have been around for really, really freaking long time, that have been on rifles for really, really freaking long time, that are on a ton of rifles that are not select fire. And the select fire qualification for an assault rifle is why they had to invent the term assault weapon, because they tried to call ARs assault rifles, and then everyone pointed out, but they're not. They're not select fire. They can't fire in burst or automatic. They can only fire semi-automatic. So that qualification meant that they had to play some word salad, right? They had to manipulate things a little bit and play around. This city ordinance, by the way, kind of importantly, is also actually specifically prohibited by state law in Pennsylvania. Like, they have a law that says that they can't actually pass a law or a city ordinance that restricts weapons greater than what is restricted on a state level. So, like, you're not allowed to just go, oh, well, within Pittsburgh, within Philadelphia, whatever, I want to ban all of any kind of a weapon, or I want to ban all pistols, or you're not allowed to do that by state law there. So even ignoring the fact that 99.999% of all gun owners will never break the law with any of their guns, including with ARs, they still want to sit there and they want to demonize us. And if we're actually as dangerous as they want to pretend that we are, there'd be a whole lot less anti-gun people out there, because we'd be going after them, right? Because apparently we're nuts. But we're not going after anybody, and we're not dangerous, and they need to shut the hell up. Sorry if anybody's chatting. I can't actually see the chat in real time. There's a huge delay. But anyway, so we are going to go ahead and switch over now to another one that I really wanted to talk about, which is 21 guns. 21 guns. Not a salute. Nope, that's the number of guns that are stolen from cars in Nashville in the past 7 days. So Nashville is not exactly located in an anti-gun location. I mean, it's Tennessee, right? So Tennessee's pretty pro-gun, and of course they're going to be pretty prevalent in the city of Nashville. But a report came out very recently in Tennessee that gun thefts from cars have risen 85% over the past 2 years. And according to the MNPD news release, the 27 out of the 42 vehicles that were stolen, they had things stolen from them, were easy targets because people left the keys inside or had the keys easily available to thieves. 5 of the vehicles were not only completely stolen, but were left running without a driver present. So that meant that it was super, super easy for all these thieves to take all of these guns. Now, why am I talking about the fact that 21 guns were stolen and stolen by a bunch of idiots? Well, the reason for that is because it demonstrates that gun laws that regulate ownership only regulate ownership for law-abiding citizens. Most of these people were law-abiding citizens who have now had their weapons stolen by criminals. And I realize this may come as a surprise to some people, criminals tend not to follow the law. That's kind of the definition of a criminal. And they are now all in possession, these 21, assuming it's 21 different criminals, they're all in possession of firearms now. beer. So the the police are going to have to look for these things. And first of all, I do want to mention, seriously, people, don't leave your car running without somebody there unless you can lock it from the outside and get back in. Don't leave your keys sitting in your car. Don't leave your keys just laying out for a thief to take, man. Like, don't do that, right? And so that's part of responsible firearms ownership. But on top of that, keep in mind, these guns are now in the wind, right? So they could wind up behind, anyone could wind up behind them, and they could wind up being used in any kind of a crime. And what has the law stopped there that stopped those people from buying the guns in the first place? Absolutely zero. It has stopped no one from obtaining those weapons. All they did is steal them. So again, if you ban firearms ownership, if you make firearms ownership incredibly difficult, the only thing that you've actually done is guaranteed that the majority of people who are going to have weapons easily are going to be the same people that you don't want to have weapons, man. That's it. You're just throwing all the weapons in the hands of people who are willing to take them, willing to violate the law in the first place. And that's not really helping a damn thing. You're never going to keep firearms out of the hands of anyone. Ludi, who wrote the book Practical Home-Built Firearms, I probably got that title wrong. Ludi designed a 9mm submachine gun and accompanying magazine from scratch, from stuff he was able to basically obtain in his backyard and in like the local hardware stores. And that he built in the UK after the UK banned like automatic firearms. So he was able to do this very, very simply. And then he wrote a book about it. Now, if you want that book, I don't really recommend going and looking for it because it's like $190 for a copy of it. And if you buy that sucker, you know bad fees on your ass. I mean, that's pretty obvious, right? Because you're going to have to order it off like Amazon, which means you pay with a credit card. You shipped it to your address. Don't do that. And while we're on that subject, another guy recently got busted with a bunch of illegal firearms and like suppressors and a couple of machine guns and stuff, some of which he built from components that he ordered online. People, how do you think this guy got caught? He got caught because he was buying all of his weapons components online and having them shipped to his house. It's not like the cops are gonna subpoena these lists of who bought these parts and then look at them and go, well, but gosh, I mean, maybe they're not there. Of course they're there. And I realize a lot of you may not realize this, but even possession of the components to build a suppressor, the components unassembled, are still a felony. They're still a violation of the NFA because that's how much that makes sense, right? Even firearms components are actually regulated. Which is hilarious because the difference between a suppressor and a flash suppressor with a flash can over it is like one disc at the very end of it, and that's it. Otherwise, they're exactly the same thing, but as long as when you purchase that stuff, it's not designed to have that end cap welded on, and you never weld on that end cap, then it doesn't count as a suppressor, because that single metal disc, that's what makes the damn difference. It's the same thing as what makes an SBR versus a pistol when you're talking about shortened ARs, right? SBR, it's designed to be put to your shoulder. A pistol, it's not designed to be put to your shoulder, but you can totally do that in the course of using it, and that's okay now. Or not okay. Or maybe okay. Or, well, they've never really said for sure, but it really kind of depends. It's because that's all they can come up with. When you're coming up with a bunch of gun rules and regulations that are completely arbitrary, that are based solely on feels and no logic or science or statistics or anything else, when that's what you're doing, you wind up with this murky gray areas all over the place. Government can't account for innovation, and government can't regulate with innovation in mind, because that's just not how the way government works, right? I mean, it's committee. None of us is as dumb as all of us. So you can't be under this stupid mistaken impression that somehow they're going to go, oh, well, we're going to say that these things are wrong, and then no one's going to make anything around it. I mean, there are California compliant ARs now. They're internally exactly the same as my AR that would not fly in California, and they're just external differences, right, that don't really majorly affect usability in any appreciable way. They're just designed around the law, which is the whole thing, is you can't... banning components, banning specific external features of a weapon and these things does literally nothing to change the way that gun is used or change its lethality or anything else. It simply doesn't. Altering the ergonomics, altering the look, customizability of a firearm aren't going to change anything. I mean, they simply aren't, and if you try, then all you've done is guarantee that anyone who's done it, you've just magically turned into a felon now. I mean, look at all of the people. This is the thing that pisses me off about the bump stocks too, is the bump stocks. It isn't even that you're not even just banned from buying and selling bump stocks. You're banned from even possessing them. And no gun regulation that even the left, even the Democrats, has ever put through actually said that you couldn't even possess them. And that includes the NFA and the GCA, because the NFA and the GCA said, well, if you already have them, you just have to register them, but you're still allowed to keep them. In fact, in 1968, there was even a machine gun amnesty where even if you had ignored that for 34 years, you could still bring those guns in and like a card with the serial number and stuff on them, and they automatically became immune from prosecution. Guys who even stole M4s and M16s from the national armories totally just engraved their own serial numbers on it and put it into the registry, and it's a completely legal firearm now for transfer. So, and don't forget, you can still buy and sell machine guns in the United States. You simply have to have all of the licensing, or simply not care about the licensing, or the fact that you're going to prison for the rest of your life if you get caught. Now, personally, that's not something I'm anxious to screw around with, but there are people who are out there who are. And you know, if it's somebody who's already planning on going out and killing people, do you really honestly think they are worried about being in prison for the rest of their life? They're going to kill someone, man. They're going to murder somebody anyway. They don't care what your firearms laws have to say at all. Moving on past that, I do want to talk about JPMorgan. So JPMorgan, if you're unfamiliar with this particular case, and that actually happened just today, JPMorgan's CEO, Jamie Dimon, probably Dimon, I don't know, but anyway, he had to appear today before Congress because there's a congressional inquiry on banking and the gun industry, and so he was getting grilled pretty hard by Democrat from New York, Representative Carolyn Maloney, and he was being grilled as part of a grilling of the 7 most prominent U.S. bank CEOs on this particular topic. She, quote, thanked the heads of Citigroup and Bank of America for adopting formal policies that limit business with certain gun industry clients. Which was an emotional response in the wake of the Parkland shooting and does literally nothing, again, to actually alter any gun crime. But then when she changes over to Diamond, when JPMorgan Chase, when they started doing business with these gun industry people, they start making a lot of money. And then when Citigroup, Bank of America, these other guys, they all turn and they run from the gun industry. JPMorgan Chase, well, they don't dislike money, do they? So they went, all right, well, we'll give you loans and have a nice interest rate, and we'll do business with you all friggin' day, man. We'll invest and do all of that. And guess what? They're making decent money doing it. And they're not violating anything actually ethical whatsoever, right? It's not like they're doing business with a group of assassins. They're doing business with people who build machines. This is what they're doing. And the way that Maloney phrases her address to Diamond, it is pretty obnoxious, because what she said after she reads some excerpts from the letter that Diamond had written, because he wrote a letter basically to shareholders and interested parties, blah, blah, blah. And he said that JPMorgan sometimes has to turn down clients with low character as a way to be a responsible bank. And Maloney says, quote, actions speak louder than words on guns. And she goes on to say, from what I can tell, these are just words to you. So implicitly, she has just said that simply by doing business in the industry space of firearms or weapons manufacture, you're automatically an individual of low character, which is obscene. I mean, she's basically implying that people like John Moses Browning, Eugene Stoner, Hiram Maxim, J.P. Gatling, I'm running out of gun designers that I can think of right offhand really quickly, Craig and Jorgensen, and I mean the guys at H&K, and the guys at, you know, in SIG and Sauer, and the guys at FN at Fabrique Nationale, and I mean all of these people. She's basically saying that all of these people, you know, the guys behind Spikes and the guys behind Anderson and the guys behind Palmetto State and DPMS and all of these people, you know, Odinworks and Joe Serbu and Barrett, and that they're all people of low moral character. She doesn't know any of these people. She's never met any of these people, and I have to say, the ones of them, you know, the in the gun industry now that I have met, that I have done business with and worked with, are definitely not people of low moral character, you bitch. Like, no. And you're calling me a person of low moral character simply because I'm into firearms. You're an idiot. And not only are you an idiot, you're a dangerous reactionary, and have been, and have never allowed a good disaster and a good tragedy to go to waste. If anyone, in fact, is of low moral character, Maloney, it's you. You are of low moral character. You don't have the balls to go, well, you know what, I prefer dangerous freedom to peaceful slavery. And you don't have the balls to go, well, people are people, they're individuals, you can't stop bad people from doing bad things. Maybe we should focus on arming good people, on giving good people the ability to defend themselves from the bad people. And the fact that you care more about your own damn power grab and your own crap there than you care about than you care about people having freedom and their rights, and that you care more about your own megalomania than you do about the idea of self-defense or even national defense, if you are so inclined. That makes you a person of low moral character. The nice thing that Diamond has said to this point is that JPMorgan Chase will probably continue to do business. He said, today, he said, quote, everything we do with clients goes through a severe process of review, reputational risk, etc. We have very small relationships with gun manufacturers in general. Said, defending the industry, Diamond stated that, quote, they are the same gun manufacturers that make military equipment for the United States military and the United States for the United States police forces, and we hold these people in the highest of regards. Now, the downside to that, on the counterpoint, is that Diamond did then go on to also say, when he was pressed, that on whether or not a formal policy like that adopted by Citigroup or Bank of America. So again, if you're pro-gun, don't do business with them. With the gun industry, Diamond said they can, quote, can certainly consider that, end quote. So, now, granted, there's been a bunch of legal challenges and scrutiny and things on the gun industry, and for that purpose, I can kind of understand certain big businesses trying to avoid doing business with the gun industry. But at the same time, grow a pair of balls, people. Come on. value freedom. Like, if a bank just sat down in front of Congress and anti-gun Congress people and was like, you know what, screw you, all right? I care about freedom. America was built by people who carried weapons all the time. We went to war when they tried to take our guns. And you people want to sit here and pretend that by disarming ourselves and leaving us completely defenseless, that somehow, by making good people defenseless, you have now rendered all of the bad people who have not magically evaporated, you've now rendered them harmless. Like, somebody needs to sit there and do that. They need to point to the UK and go, look at the UK's current knife epidemic. Look at the UK's violence epidemic in general. Look at the fact that they still have tons of gun violence in the UK. And you tell me that banning guns has done a damn thing for them. The people. I don't give a crap about the UK government. I hope that it burns to the ground. But I'm saying the people of the United Kingdom have in no way benefited in any aspect of their lives by you taking away their ability to defend themselves. And if somebody goes in front of Congress and says that, man, like, dude, I don't even need to buy anything from you. Like, here's money. Like, I just want to send you money. Like, I'll start a GoFundMe as a thank you for them. Because holy crap, that would be amazing, right? Like, it's ridiculous that that we've gotten to this point in this country that a banker has to say, well, I mean, I guess I'd consider it, in front of Congress. And what business is it? I would like you to tell me, what business is it of a congressman who a bank decides to do business with? It's none of their damn business in the first place. That is government overstep all over again. Just like it always has been. Man, this is why I drink. People wonder why I drink. I'm telling you, right here. Nothing will make you go, well, this sucks. Quite like reading the local news, right? So, there's that. All right. So, I got one more article of being pissed off before we get to the fun stuff. And this one, I just spotted it because it was just updated this morning. And this will make your blood boil. Hey, now, if you're familiar with the state of Illinois, and one would presume that you are. In my case, I'm just north of it. If you're unfamiliar with the state of Illinois, well, congratulations. Seriously, congratulations. Because Illinois sucks. But if you're unfamiliar with the state of Illinois, it is very averse to firearms. And they have a lot of laws that restrict firearms access. Now, when I say they, I mean the government, because the people clearly aren't, because they have a higher rate of gun violence in just the city of Chicago than the entire Old West as long as it existed. So, clearly, the gun laws are working well for them. Well, in a typical fashion for governments to go, well, we just need to ban things harder, Illinois has come up with a new plan. This plan is going to work. You know what? Banning handguns, that didn't work. Having statewide licensing to even own a firearm, that didn't work either. So now, they got it now. They have their solution. And their solution is that has been introduced into the Illinois General Assembly. There are actually 3 bills that have been filed for it. And they would require authorities to collect fingerprints from people applying for state gun licenses, or alternatively allow people seeking a state firearms owner's identification card to provide their fingerprints to the Illinois State Police as part of the background check. It was introduced by Representative Kathleen Willis. It's part of her package of Go Beyond Fingerprinting. And it would also require background checks for private sales between individuals, which is something that in most states, Wisconsin included, is not required. You can buy a gun private party to private party. without any kind of background checks. It's generally unregulated because it's generally regarded that any law, or understood and regarded by jurisprudence, that any law that would attempt to ban this practice of no background check transfers would be effectively unenforceable, which is something they're already seeing in Washington and Oregon anyway, and California for that matter. But I digress. So it would also reduce the time a firearms ID card. Yes, that's right. If you own a gun, you have to carry a special card that says you own a gun, so that the Gestapo is affair. You have to have that, and it would change it from being valid for 10 years, which is what it is currently, to 5 years. That's right. Right now, even, if you live in the state of Illinois and you have a firearms owner's ID card and you buy a gun, you only get to own that gun for 10 years at a time before you have to reapply for that ID card. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and spitball here, but I'm going to assume that if somebody collects a whole bunch of guns and they forget to re-up their ID, I don't think they suddenly give up all of their guns. I'm pretty sure they lose them in a boating accident, because, come find it. So, on top of that, it would drop that to 5 years. So now only 5 years that you get to legally own a gun that you already own, before you need to go through that application. And it would also require the state police to take steps to seize weapons from people whose gun licenses have been revoked. Again, lose them in a boating accident. Super tragic, man, but I'm telling you, it happens like every freaking day in America. Thousands of guns are accidentally dumped into rivers and lakes. This is an epidemic. Very sad. But it would also give the state police greater discretion to deny permits to carry concealed firearms. So even if every other state would tell you, nah, that's fine. You know what? You got a disorderly conduct, or maybe you have a DUI or something. You know what? That doesn't mean that you're dangerous necessarily. So you get to carry your gun and defend your person and your family. In Illinois now, if this bill passes, what that would mean is that they can go, you know what? Nah, I don't like you, and just not give it to you. So it makes it a lot more like California. Chicago Police Superintendent Eddie Johnson is obviously advocating for the measure because, of course, he is. Chicago police will hump the living crap out of the legs of all of their corrupt legislators. And he said it would, quote, close a substantial gap contributing to the illegal market and unacceptable gun violence here in the city of Chicago. So what you're telling me is that the guns that have already been obtained illegally and are being owned illegally, it will suddenly now make these even more illegal, so now that's going to fix the problem. Okay, yeah, no, sure, buddy. Yeah, no, we just need to ban things harder, man. That's what it is. We need to ban things even harder, and that will definitely work this time. I'm certain. No. That's great logic. No, so you obviously already can't keep firearms out of the hands of criminals. I mean, just go to Chicago, go to the inner city. You're going to see that. So your solution is to make it even harder for legal, law-abiding firearms owners to own those firearms legally. And that's how you're going to keep the illegal guns out of the hands of the people who own them illegally. I'm no mathematician, but I do perhaps see a slight flaw in your logic. I don't understand. It's like the fact that criminals don't obey laws completely escapes these people's minds. Like, they honestly don't understand that criminals don't obey laws. And, these are the same people pretty frequently, because it's usually political leftists. These are the same people who also will tell you endlessly how you need to end the war on drugs because all you're doing is putting otherwise relatively good people in prison, ripping them away from their families, and you're still not keeping drugs off of the street. But they refuse to apply the identical logic for drugs to guns. What? I mean, because it's like they're under the, well, see, now if we had maybe that they are applying the same, and they're like, well, maybe if we had licensing and you had to have an ID card for your heroin, then we'd end the opiate crisis right there. Really, the problem is that these people are legislating for what ought to be, what they think ought to be, and not what is. And you see that with socialists of all stripes, right? Left, right, everything else. You see that exact thing where they go, well, if we just legislate for how people should act, because if we make things illegal, then they can't do it, because they always follow the law. These people say as they take illegal bribes and things in Chicago. If you just do that, then you've solved the problem. People can't actually do it. And it boggles my mind, because you can't. Machiavelli in The Prince, and side note about The Prince, don't misunderstand The Prince, it isn't actually advocating for the Medici's rule of, it was actually kind of, I don't want to say satirical, but it was, allegorically critical. Anyway, Machiavelli even points out that anybody who tries to rule based on what ought to be rather than what is only sows the seeds of his own ruin, or rules for his own ruin, something like that, finds plans for his own. I don't remember exactly what the quote is, man. It's been a while since I read The Prince, but that's what it says, more or less. To paraphrase, is that it's so all that you're doing is you're steering yourself down a path of destruction. And it's super predictable that they're going to continue to do this, because if they have to face reality, then they have to face the reality that everything that they have ever tried to do has not worked, and that they're failures. Jesus. Again, this is why I drink, people. This right here, because I have to deal with this world. But yeah, so they're under the impression that if they throw a fingerprint requirement on there and things, that it's going to change anything. And part of that is stemmed from back on February 15th when you had Gary Martin in Aurora, who he'd just been fired. He was there for 15 years at the Henry Pratt Company. He shot and killed 5 employees, including a 21-year-old Northern University student who was on his first day of an internship there, because sometimes life really sucks, bruh. He also wounded 6 other people, including 5 cops. Silver linings. Before being killed in a shootout with police themselves. The state police later acknowledged that it had erroneously given Martin an FOID card in 2014 after a background check based on his name and birth date didn't turn up anything that would disqualify him from owning a gun. So, I want to reiterate here, he already had to get an FOID. He was given one incorrectly and then bought the gun, which means that making people get this thing is not even working for people who are trying to be law-abiding. I just want to point that out. So, again, now on top of that, keep in mind that the reason they're doing the fingerprint thing is because it was later revealed that Martin had, when he went to get his concealed carry license, believing that he had every legal right to own a firearm, that it turned out he had a 1995 felony conviction in Mississippi stemming from a domestic incident with his ex-girlfriend where he beat and stabbed her, so they revoked his card. However, he still had the guns, right? Like, because again, I lost them, sorry, or I sold them, private party, my bad. So again, their existing laws did not keep any of this from happening. So they just want to law harder. He already even had a Smith & Wesson pistol, which is what he actually used for the shooting. And again, it was a pistol, right? It was not not like an AR or something scary. It was just a pistol, and he still managed to do that. Why? Because all the people that he was shooting were entirely unarmed. Because again, if you make good people defenseless, you do not make bad people harmless. Isn't how it works. It's not like the one congresswoman who said that, when the shooter sees that everybody else is unarmed, then they will just lay down their weapons and stop what they're doing because that's just human nature. Surprisingly, not AOC, I just want to go ahead and point out. That was, and I understand that's shocking, actually not AOC. That was before her that was said. And I want to say it was like Nancy Pelosi, but I could be wrong. I don't know if somebody wants to correct me in the comments or something, but it's just, it's absolutely insane that anyone would think that that's how that works. That oh, well, I'm here to kill everyone and slaughter you like a bunch of sheep, but all of you are actually sheep because you're all unarmed, so my bad. I'm just gonna go home. Sorry about that. No, are you bleed? That's my bad, man. I'm really sorry about that. I'm gonna go ahead. I'm just gonna go, and I will see you guys Monday. Like, that isn't how that works. Oh my god. Alan, why do anarchist men have awesome beards? Because anarchist men are awesome, and so we need a beard that justifies the awesomeness. This beard has taken me a while, and it is meticulously cared for and velvety soft. It was in Aurora. It was Aurora shooting. It's February 15th, if you want to Google that, the Aurora shooting. This being live, once it's done, you can rewind and pick up. I actually mentioned exactly where it is and stuff, but you should be able to find it. But that is the Illinois one. A bunch of ATF Gestapo people are also in support of that law because they're awful people anyway, because anyone who works for the ATF is in fact awful, and hates freedom. Personally, I fully support the repeal of the NFA and the GCA in their entirety. I want to see the average person. I mean, really, my entire politics can be summed up in that famous phrase that I would like gay married cyborgs to be able to protect their cocaine fields with unregulated, undocumented rocket launchers. It's what I want. I want freedom. Full stop. I don't care what anybody has to say about it. I don't care what you want to whine about safety, because, again, I prefer the dangers attending too much freedom to the slavery that accompanies too little of it. And I don't give a damn what anybody has to say about it. Freedom is what matters, and that's it. I don't care. Like, oh, well, what about the children? How many children have to die before you're going to support gun legislation? All of them. And even then, I'll still tell you no. Because freedom isn't dependent on one person. Freedom isn't dependent on lives. Freedom just matters. Jeremy. Yeah, I agree. They have no intention of actually. Gun control isn't about guns. It's about control. That's what it's about, right? Gun control is about the control part, not the gun part. Because if they can disarm you, if they can leave you defenseless, then when they decide to take away your plastic straws and your 24-ounce drinks, and then, oh, by the way, we're also going to mandate your vaccines. That's official now in New York. The $1,000 fine and things for not getting vaccines. And that will probably cover, I imagine, next Sunday. But for now, just to bring up a real quick synopsis of that, basically, state of New York being, New Yorkistan, or United Soviet Socialist Republic of New York, whatever the hell you want to call it, they have decided that they are going to fine people for not getting vaccinated. So if you're unarmed and they decide, well, you have to get vaccinated now, which historically, is completely safe, the government giving people vaccines. It's not like they've infected a bunch of groups of people with syphilis or anything, and then did it again in Central America or anything. They definitely did. That never happened. So if they can disarm you, And then what are you going to do when they go, okay, well, you have to take this shot and that shot and this shot and this shot. And by the way, we're going to mandate lobotomy for these people. Oh, and by the way, we're going to do this and that. And sorry, we're going to have to take 80% of your income now. And we're going to have to do this. And we're going to have to. And there's nothing you can do to stop them if you have no weapons. Remember, the Second Amendment wasn't written in case the white-tailed deer turn into zombies. The Second Amendment was written because your government was inevitably going to turn tyrannical, and you need to remind them who the hell was supposed to be in charge. Now, I don't necessarily agree with the Constitution, but at least that part, it works. Yeah, or imprisonment. They'll freaking cage you. And remember, once they have you in prison, again, they could force you to get vaccinated. The greater good. Yeah. The, do not be counter-revolutionary, comrade. We must do these things for the glory of the motherland. Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what it is, too. Is more tyranny, more horrifying things have been done in the name of this mistaken, stupid idea of the greater good than anything. I mean, people were slaughtered by government after government after government throughout the 20th century and just prior to the 20th century in the name of the greater good. The Armenian genocide was in the name of the greater good. The 6 million people dying in camps across Eastern and Central Europe was for the greater good. The destruction of the American native was for the greater good. The pogroms and the purge by Stalin and the gulags that killed 100 million people was for the greater good. Like, it's always for the greater good. The Khmer Rouge and Pol Pot killing all of the educated people was because it was for the greater good. The slaughter of the Montagnards and attempted slaughter of the Hmong in Vietnam was for the greater good. Yeah, exactly. The imprisonment of the Japanese in the United States was for the greater good. The use of slavery itself in the United States and Europe and most of the world was supposedly for the greater good. It's always the greater good. Who's greater good, man? Who's greater good? Because the only greater good I'm aware of is freedom. That's the only thing that truly helps anyone. That's the only way that you actually advance the world in any way, shape, or form is freedom, true liberty, not this group of people in charge telling you, no. This is for your own protection. You know, I mean, it's the same thing as the robot in, what was that in? Was that in Rogue One? Then you are being rescued. Please do not attempt to resist. Like, that's the way government works. Like, there's nothing more terrifying than we're from the government. We're here to help you. Like, bottom line. Because I tell you what, that's freaking terrifying. No. We're here to help. It's all for the greater good. And you see that throughout history. You still see that now. What's his face? In Rhodesia, who took all of the white farmers' land, and then now they're all starving because nobody actually wants to run any of those farms. That was for the greater good. Boy, that worked out hot. Fidel Castro and Che Guevara murdering thousands of political dissidents and people they considered counter-revolutionary and running Cuba into the ground. You know, that was for the greater good. I mean, that's what it always seems to be. It's always for the greater good is always the argument. All the time. Yeah, the creation of Ultron was for the greater good. Mic drop. There it is. Ultron. If you support the greater good, you support Ultron. Good luck arguing against that, Status. Checkmate. Well, we're at about just a little shy of an hour. I think it's time for Florida Man. You guys think it's time for Florida Man? I do. Florida Man! Alright, so, Florida Man of the week is that award has got to go to Thomas Devaney Lane and his army of turtles. That guy, right there, Thomas Devaney Lane. He, is a self-proclaimed saint. And he was arrested in a coastal Florida town Sunday after screaming obscenities and threatening to, quote, unleash an army of turtles, an affidavit said. I will unleash my army of turtles for the future of fatherland. So yeah, so that is what we have for our Florida Man of the Week. Authorities received multiple calls about a man who is disturbing the peace at several businesses in Indialantic, a town about 75 miles southeast of Orlando. The affidavit said the suspect, later identified, was 61-year-old Thomas Devaney Lane. He was calling himself the Saint and allegedly said his army of turtles would, quote, destroy everyone. Lane accompanied a responding officer back to police headquarters, where he pounded on the walls and glass before leaving the station. Officers later found him in the parking lot of a 7-Eleven, where he allegedly cursed out customers and called 911. Lane allegedly told the 911 operator that the responding officer, quote, needed to leave now or you will all be sorry. You fucked with the Saint, the report said. Police said Lane refused to exit his vehicle and was taken out by force. During that ordeal, Lane allegedly continued to shout obscenities while warning passersby about an impending army of turtles, according to Fox 35. Lane was arrested and charged with disturbing the peace, resisting arrest without violence, and misusing 911. He was taken into Brevard County Jail complex later and released on bail. So really, I think what we need to take away from this is that Bexley does not, in fact, need an army of chickens to take over the world. She probably needs to listen to the Saint and use an army of turtles. Attack turtles. Vicious, vicious attack turtles. I just have to chuckle. Because that is glorious. That's... And where else, man? Where else but Florida do you see the anyone threatening anyone with an army, a legit army of turtles? That turtle looks grizzled, man. Look at him. Grizzled as hell. Jesus. He's seen some things. That's what I got planned. I have no idea if there's anything else anybody else wants to talk about, but that was your Florida Man, which will be a continuously featured segment on my weekly, I guess I can call this a podcast. I don't know. I'm still figuring out how to do all this podcast crap on my own. But that is the plan. We will, every week, I'm going to look through all of the Florida Man files and eventually pick one out, and I will feature a weekly Florida Man. Or Florida Woman, if that's what happens. I don't really like Florida Woman. Is there a better Florida Lass, maybe? Should I do Florida Man and Florida Lass? Florida Lass! Faith and be yours, Florida lass, run for your lives. Yeah, Foot Clan. Yeah, he was arrested and threatened to take over the world with his turtle army. The officer countered with, well, I have Officer Bebop and Rocksteady standing by. Only 90s kids and also 80s kids get those jokes. Millennials don't really nearly as much because your versions of the Ninja Turtles suck, man. I'm really sorry, kids. I mean, not that the Ninja Turtles movies were phenomenal, because, well, they weren't. But don't forget that Mr. Winslow is in fact a supervillain. You just got here late, Tomo. Don't blame us. All right. A guy in Florida, he threatened to take over the world with his turtle army while calling himself the Saint. So we need the Foot Clan, Bebop, Rocksteady. Who are those? Taka and Razar? I have no idea. I don't remember that. Dude, I was a kid, man. I don't remember. I've suffered a lot of head injuries since then. Well, yeah, not all Americans. I mean, we also know that for some reason you put red beans in flavoring for Kit Kats, and that you have vending machines for ladies' underwear. So we also know that about the Japanese. Oh, I didn't see it. I probably saw a second movie, but I only vaguely remember it. All of humanity is becoming... Well, I can't say more... That's really relative, though. Because when you say over time, do you mean since... The question is, to anybody who's just on the audio only, the question is, do you think humanity in general is becoming more free or less free over time? And over time is really relative. Because if we go back far enough and we go back to, say... pre-Roman Gaul, you had way more freedom. If we go to pre-Christianity Ireland, you had way more freedom. If we go to Roman times, it's probably pretty equivalent. Although even in Rome you had a little more freedom than now, but Roman law and American law and in most Western countries is actually remarkably comparable. The Romans allowed for a lot of things, and were okay with a lot of things that even Americans may not be. So they were a little more permissible in things, like prostitution was a given, and obviously blood sport was a little bit of a thing. But yeah, that's I think that if we go from pre-Roman Europe to now, yes, humanity is getting less and less free, with occasional spikes back up, because government just is continuously growing. Now, there are statistical outliers to that. For instance, the collapse of the Soviet Union into the Russian Federation, and then like Armenia, Azerbaijan, Estonia, Georgia, Latvia, Lithuania, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, And obviously, the reunification Germany thing. I mean, some of that stuff is kind of an outlier. But the general superchasm of human or megachasm. What the hell is the opposite of a microchasm? Anyone know? I don't know what the actual antonym to that word is. Write this down on your calendars. It's a time that Andrew didn't know a word, because you're not going to run into that too often. But the general gist is that humanity is steadily losing its freedoms, greater and greater and greater, and it's a how do you boil your frog thing, and a lot of it, I suspect, is not. I don't necessarily hold to the giant secret cabal idea. I don't totally reject that that's a possibility, but I think that's giving a lot of people a lot more credit than they ought to get. The general, I think what's happening is just you have people who have been disenfranchised for so long, and they're seeing the ability to grab power, and so they're really, really hardcore going after it. And ironically, I think if you actually analyze it historically, that a huge amount of that is probably actually the result of just after World War I, right? You had the collapse of these empires, and the empires tended to allow a certain amount, measure more freedom to most people. Now, I'm not talking about Great Britain, because Great Britain is its own piece of crap that deserved to burn to the ground. But the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and once the German Empire formed, the German Empire, and the Frankish Empire, and even the Ottoman Turks and things, they had a little genocide thrown in there, but in general you saw a lot more hesitancy to really crack down on a lot of liberty, because too much crackdown on liberty was threatening the stability of the empire. And that's really apparent in Austro-Hungary, because they were already like an empire made out of sub-zero cold glass, right? It was already so fragile that all it was going to take was this one tiny little tipping point, and it was just going to disintegrate anyway. So they had to be really, really careful, and it was this constant dance. And once all of these empires collapsed, all of these previously disenfranchised people and things suddenly found themselves with power. I mean, even in Italy, you saw that in Italy, because remember, Italy was a really, really new country when World War I started. Really new. And so you had a lot of these nations that China even, right? You had the Age of Warlords just after World War I. In China, because prior to that you had the Chinese Workers' Corps, that something like 100 million Chinese or something came to France to work in factories and work on the docks and things that everybody forgets about. But you had that, and so you still had a lot of empires, and then you have the end of the empire with the boy king in China. You have Japan then have its machinations for macrocosm. Awesome. I thought it was at macrocosm, but all right. But you had Japan got its, and Japan gets really interesting. Actually, if you really want to hear some really, really interesting stuff on the history of Japan just after the American Civil War, and then through World War II, until the unfounding of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. If you actually, it's called it's the series The Supernova in the East. It's a 2-part series that Dan Carlin does on his Hardcore History podcast that I really, really like. It's really, really good. It's really long, but his Hardcore History podcast is really awesome, and Supernova in the East is really good about breaking down a lot of the political vagaries of what happened, and how the United States went from how we wound up incredibly friendly with Japan, which was kind of the equivalent of date rape, but in like geopolitical terms. And so you had that, and then you where basically Japan had cut itself off, from the West, and then the United States kind of shows up with a bunch of steamers in, I don't remember, a harbor town that exists that they put steamers into that I can't remember, but they showed up there and said, "Hey, guess what, assholes? You're doing business with us now. You can't stay closed forever." And I'm not really sure why. Maybe they'd heard of the Wagyu beef. I don't know. They suspected that one day your cartoons would surpass anything the West could ever hope for. Yokohama, okay. Yokohama, and they show up and just, no, you guys are doing business with us and you don't have a choice. And we have a bunch of guns, by the way, if you want to say no. And that's kind of how the United States and Japan start working together. Japan was a super close ally during World War I. Guam, which is an American colony to this day, would have fallen without the Japanese. There's actually some really bizarre history with a German battleship in Guam before the United States actually joined World War I, that you'd have to look up because I don't remember the name of the ship, but it gets really weird and really interesting. And then Japan kind of falls out of favor, and he goes into all of it, but basically the United States kind of brought a lot of the conflict onto ourselves with Japan, with just cutting off a country that was otherwise friendly to that point and then turning them into an enemy. Although the military kind of takeover from the empire, from the emperor of Imperial Japan certainly didn't help. And some of that, and it's funny because Americans love to worship like Bushido, but a lot of that it kind of plays into what happened. Yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff between the U.S. and Japan, and then after World War II, Japan kind of fully embraces the idea of the West and the idea of the United States. Realizes they can take us over more easily with tentacle porn than they can with fire bombs on hot air balloons, which struck California, by the way. Little known fact. Also, little known fact, the Japanese totally are one of the few countries to ever actually invade and hold American territory. And that was, it starts with a K. It's an island off of the coast of Alaska that everybody also forgets. Oregon too. It started a bunch of like forest fires and all sorts of stuff. But yeah, it was actually an attack on American soil during World War II. That by the Japanese, everybody forgets. Also, side note, there's a U-boat in diveable water just off the coast of North Carolina. If anybody wants to check that out too. The Kiska. That's what it was. It was Kiska, the island of Kiska, that the Japanese took and held. And there is still actually, there's actually a documentary that a guy who would go on to become a really famous Hollywood director made about it. If you haven't seen the documentary 5 Came Back on Netflix, watch it because it's really interesting and really, really cool. And they talk about those directors, and I want to say it was Ford. It might have been... Oh, give me a minute here. Let me... Kiska and Attu were the islands. The film, The Illusion... Who made it? Somebody made it. Report from the Aleutians. That's what it's called. It was John Huston. Sorry, Huston. Oh my god. I feel like I should slap myself for that. John Huston, famous director, actually made that. A number of very, very famous directors made a lot of propaganda for the United States during World War II. Yeah, Report from the Aleutians. It dates to 1943. And it was actually John Huston who did it. He also did a couple. He actually did filming of. I don't think it was Midway, but it might have been Midway. Guam, something. Where he, like, actually was, like, standing on a platform as the Japanese were, like, raiding. and filming it, so. Super bizarre, man. Super bizarre. But yeah. So, where was I? Man, did I digress. I have no idea how I even wound up where I'm at now. Topic-wise, you get me started on history, and I can go for literal hours going into the finer points of history. And just crazy, weird stuff in history. Hey, they might have. You never know. It's weird. Stranger things have happened. I know I read a story about a guy who was in an Ultriad, which is like a Jewish fighting settlement in the forest of Poland? Romania? Hungary? Something like that? He fought with that Ultriad, and the Bielski Ultriad, he wound up running into in New York City years later. He ran, or no, maybe I'm confusing two stories. But there was a guy who fought in the East with a resistance during World War II. He watched people get executed by this guy, and then winds up running into this Nazi war criminal in New York in a post office in like the 1970s, and actually like just shot him in the post office, which is crazy. But 42 and 40, where were they that they were crossing paths in 42 and 45? Because in 42, I mean, that would have been the push back, and the start of the push back against the rising sun, but not really a full-blown... I would hardly say that the United States is a free country. Alaska and Okinawa. Okinawa is how I learned that the Japanese are really, really into KFC for Christmas. That was weird. Oh, yeah. I mean, Japan, there's basically no gun rights, which is why airsoft is huge. There's a lot of things. There's actually a lot of stuff that I've found with Japan where it's not even like a law in the books, but like, dude, will you like lose your job if you violate all these societal norms? So that's always been something that I've thought was really interesting. Like, Japan fascinates me just because it's so alien and it's so strange. And there's technically this like code of, you know, just like this whole Bushido thing, but it's also like not a thing. Move to Somalia if you don't like America, you ungrateful commie. Yeah. Says the guy who really likes socialized police and socialized military and social control of business and the borders and you commie, I'm pretty sure you're a lot closer, bucko. Yeah, and of those 900,000, how many are 100 years old? Like, the highest rate of centenarians in the world. It's insane. That's just and they're like crediting it to the fish, which is hilarious because post Fukushima, I don't know if that's going to be the case. Here, there. Where? It's not sushi's rice, man. It's not fish. It's not sushi. Sushi does not refer to the fish. And don't you dare call me a weeb. So help me. I'm definitely not a weeb. Well, if it makes you feel any better, the British actively tried to kill my native language, so they didn't succeed, but they tried. God damn it! I told you not to call me a weeb. I'm actually not that into, like Kurosawa's films. I got into, ironically, because of Tora, because he directed half of it. And I appreciated his cinematography. And then I got into some of the others. Kurosawa does one that's based on Shakespeare. I want to say it's like something weird, like the King of Castle 21 or something weird. It's supposed to take place during feudal Japan, and yeah, I mean, hey, it's better. You know what? At least Tora does the fight and the lead up and things justice versus the movie Pearl Harbor, which is like 5 minutes of interesting and a heck of a lot of stupid and kill me now. Yeah, it's true. Cherokee's basically gone as a language. They almost nobody, like Lindsay grew up on the Ojibwa reservation, and almost nobody still speaks Ojibwa. She learned a little bit of it in school, but it's not something that really gets taught a lot. Well, they had to a few, or what, A6, was that A6M zeros? It's not like a zero is a complicated piece of machinery to build necessarily, because it's like wood and fabric and a little bit of metal. I'm sure you could, make a product request for a mass buy from Mitsubishi. I'm sure they're down with that. They're going to be fans of that request. Yeah, we'll get right on that. Build you a bunch of zeros. You can actually buy, there is a company, speaking of warbirds, there's actually a company that builds Mark 9, I want to say. Mark 9 Spitfires. New. All you need is a chunk of the original airframe and they can build it. That'd be a hell of a thing to see fly. I'd still... I've seen P-51 Mustangs. I've seen Yaks fly. I've seen the Soviet airplane, not the Beast of Burden. I've seen a house fly. Why? I never seen an elephant fly. No. I've seen a few B-24 Liberators. B-51s, yes, 49s, Blenheims. I've seen, I think, 2 Blenheims fly. I don't know if they were both original or if only one was. But I've seen Blenheim fly. I've seen 2 Mosquitoes fly that may or may not have been replicas. Maybe B-26. I've seen because since I'm in Wisconsin, we have the not only the Deke Slayton Airfest, it happens here where I'm at in La Crosse. So we have Deke Slayton every year, and that usually tracks 3 to 5 warbirds at least. The Blue Angels usually come. We get some interesting flight troops and things. Yeah, B-25 Mitchell. And then there's also in Oshkosh, there's like the largest airfest in the world, and I've gone a couple of years. I was actually there one year, and they had an FA-117 stealth bomber, and it was stealth. So what they'd done is they'd taken like a fuel tube and a couple of things and filled it with foam and like positioned it so it looked like it was running to a plane, and they had stairs set up and then a little sign said FA-117 on it. That was pretty great. Yeah, I've seen a few pretty good warbirds. North Africa and the Pacific is, or was it? I suppose it was going out of North Africa and hitting Italy. That would be interesting. I wonder what plane that is. It just became kind of a the FA-117 just kind of became an anachronism after a while. Because I mean, you got to realize that the majority of people that the United States military is fighting are non-state actors, right? They're not going to be state actors who have radar, and like you're never going to come up against another Kari, right? Like the Kari was a unique situation, and that's where the FA-117 kind of shined. But even it really didn't, because it wound up getting shot down, one of them. So, not during Operation Desert Storm, because we actually didn't lose a single FA-117 during Desert Storm. But after that, over Iran or Syria or something, that it got shot down. By like a relatively not impressive like shoulder fired missile system too, that brought it down. An F-35. Oh, the new one. Well, I mean, it was an F-35, so no harm done. It's not like it works. But yeah, the F-35 Lightning going down with no transponder, nothing. They can't find it. There's no trace of it. That's a, maybe if we just tuck this broken one away, everyone will forget that we don't have any working ones. It works-ish. The plane works. The plane works. The helmet doesn't totally work. And the helmet is integral to the flight of it, which is really dumb. I don't know why you would design an entire airplane around a helmet, but okay. The F-22... See, but I also think that the F-35 and the F-22, again, are kind of planes without a purpose. Like, they're... Like, it's... There's this principle that you see throughout a lot of military history where countries will create weaponry and tactics and things for the last war that they fought. So you saw that at the beginning of World War II when Hitler invades France. They have the Maginot Line, the tanks that they have, the BIS, and they have a couple of others, are really designed for trench warfare. They're designed for much more static war. their entire principle of fortresses and lines to fall back to, it's all based on World War One tactics. And so, and they're undertrained, and there's a lot of reasons for that. There's this whole stupid idea that, well, if the French soldier just believes enough in his his country and his purpose, that it'll all be okay. And no, that isn't how that works. When you have an entire Panzer division rolling at you, you don't just, if you just believe hard enough. No, sorry. Tinkerbell does not exist. And so you're going to get screwed. But keep in mind, too, with that, as an aside to the aside, keep in mind that Germany was also perpetually teetering on the brink of losing anyway throughout that whole French invasion. And had the English and the French not kind of just crumpled like paper in front of them, they actually wouldn't have been able to do anything, and World War II would have gone very, very differently. But had World War II gone very differently, Germany would have wound up different. We would not have wound up with Rammstein, and that would have been a loss to humanity as a whole. So, the Chinese fighter, I'm super skeptical of. I've seen what the Chinese produce when they're really trying, and I'm unimpressed. Oh God, what was the Honky? Check out the Honky if you want to check out what China's capable of producing when they're really trying. The car is called the Honky, and it is also, if you want to talk about a typical communist dictator's car, I cannot imagine anything more. Honky is apparently, by the way, Chinese slang for like red star. So, yeah, it's called the Honky. Bunch of Chinese riding around in honkies. It's true story. Actually not a bunch, because it's like a ridiculous amount of money for really shoddy workmanship. I'm just really skeptical. I'm not saying that they're not any good. I'm just really skeptical about just how good they are and what kind of longevity they might actually be able to pull off. Because, I mean, they might be good. They might be amazing. We'll see. I guarantee you we will see. I'd love to see a resurgence of prop planes, to be honest with you, for CAS. I'd love that. As an infantry guy, man, like the A-10 Warthog not being updated, there's no new iterations with it or anything else, I think is a detriment, because nobody's really made an effort to support CAS the way that they should have. And the A-10 therefore remains kind of the best that you get out of CAS aircraft, and it's like 40 years old, so like we really need something better for CAS. And because you're constantly dealing with non-state actors and non-traditional armies and asymmetrical warfare consistently, and you're probably going forward. Now again, like I was saying earlier, like that's kind of going back to that same idea that you tend to design aircraft and weapons and things for your last fight and not your next fight. And there's been an attempt in the defense industry designed for the next fight, but the reality of geopolitics for the most part is that it really does look like the next fight and the fight after that and the fight after that and the fight after that are going to be non-state actors. And you're going to just see insurgencies, and you're going to see terrorism, and that's what you're going to be fighting, and not an organized military necessarily. And I think to think that that's what you're going to be doing is a serious mistake. Look up the A-29. I thought that said Super Taco, and I gotta say, if the plane had been named Super Taco, it would have been a much preferable name. Oh yeah, that's the new thing, right? The Embraer EMB 314 Super Tucano. It looks like a trainer from World War II. Or just after World War II. Like a, why does that look so damn familiar? That looks really familiar. I think I've seen those before. Like in person. But I don't know where. But, I mean, prop fighters make more sense, at least for close air support, because you're moving slower. So, because you can move slower, you start up higher, you have a little more time on target. The downside, obviously, is then you're, instead of burning relatively, comparatively cheap kerosene, essentially, the jet fuel, instead you're burning highly refined aviation fuel. And at least if you design it the same way motors used to be. I mean, I don't know. It's not like I'm an aeronautical engineer, so I have no idea if you could just use like normal fuel in a prop plane now and just make life easy. But logistics are why Germany lost World War II. Logistics are why a lot of countries lose a lot of wars. Don't make fun of my beard. My beard is beautiful. It's beautifully orange. Beautifully orange. But hello, Terry. I got a libertarian watching my live feed. Well, the F-22, yeah, was designed for air superiority. That's why it's got super cruise. It's why its functionality is different. And it's the F-35. I just have a hard time seeing a point to the F-35 at all. Especially when you're spending trillions of dollars on something that, for the most part, appears to all the world like a giant boondoggle. There's just no goddamn reason that you had to dump trillions of dollars into that project. But we can fly with a cool computerized helmet and it goes up and down straight. Well, so did the whatchamacallit, that I can't remember, that the Marines used. And it was crap. So does the Osprey. And it like killed a lot of people because it's crap. The F-35 does not have the ammunition capacity or the correct arms for CAS, and anybody who tells you any different is not an infantry person and doesn't understand the needs of CAS, which are in fact dictated by the infantry and the reality on the ground. Harrier, yeah, that's the name I was looking for. Yeah, the Harrier was basically kind of useless crap too. I mean, it was used, but it's not like you couldn't have just as easily used an entirely different plane that already existed and was a hell of a lot cheaper for an identical role. So, why? Why does the Harrier exist? It's just... I mean, the Harrier exists for smaller British aircraft carriers. The United States didn't really need them. The problem is that, see, the U.S. military, it's really weird. If you study the history of arms adoption in the U.S. military, for a very long time, it was a, let's stick with what we know, and if this is new and different, who cares? This works. And increasingly over time, largely because of the billions and billions and billions of dollars that the defense industry has dumped into lobbying, aka bribing, Congress to buy their shit, and take your stolen hard-earned money and dump it into things. The attitude has changed a lot to what's the latest and greatest and newest and best at the top level. At the operational levels, the truly operational levels. Not necessarily like the high-level logistical level or the tactical. I mean, the on-the-ground individual unit level, what we have works for the most part. Like, there's very, very little new stuff that needs to be developed for most of the fights that we're fighting, especially because, like, our forces encountered, like, World War II, literal actual Nazi self-propelled guns in the insurgency in Iraq. Actual Nazi tanks and things that we encountered. So it's an uphill battle to convince me, having seen all of that we need anything new, because I don't think we do. It's everything that we have works, and it works fine, and you don't need to steal more money from me to pay for new crap that we didn't need in the first place. What we needed was an updated A10. What we needed was a slightly updated phalanx system, or its terrestrial brethren. Like that stuff we needed. We need a better, more IED resistant armored vehicle. Like, those are things that I can see arguing for, but for the most part, there's just, but they adopted the Harrier for a ship that was designed for a role that it didn't need to be. Again, it's a thing that never really happened. I mean, okay, Panama, but beyond that, there wasn't anything else we needed it for, man. None of it. You don't need all of these additional weapons. You don't need all of this extra stuff. You don't need to dump all of this money and all of this additional spending into new weapons and things when the United States was never intended to even have a army at all that was a standing army. Now, if you want to develop that stuff for the private sector, hey, cool. Hey, yeah, of course we're paying for that too. You know, the Marines also trained a new amphibious assault specialist force in Japan, and America is now paying for their training and equipment and thing. Because of course they are, because no country would be complete without an American trained and funded army. Yes, America, where you can get told if you don't like it, leave, but all of our money does exactly that. Dude, Patton friggin' hated the idea of rebuilding Japan. Like, Patton hated it. He was just like, no, don't do this. Don't do this. What are you doing? And Eisenhower warned against that with both Japan and Germany, where he's like, no. Like, if we're going to Although I will say that MacArthur was really smart about seeing that if you tried to not only defeat Japan the way that was done, but then also obliterate the emperor and take all of that stability out, that you were going to cause increased chaos. And I do credit MacArthur for being pretty good with that. MacArthur is one of my favorite military leaders to learn about, just because he was such a nasty cuss, and I kind of like him. That leaving Corregidor, and I shall return. He's just like, I'm gonna be back. Don't you worry. Yeah, like that. I don't know, but it and his plays with having the emperor travel and address the populations and personally and things after they'd never even seen him, much less heard his voice or anything. I mean, yeah, that was cool. Yeah. Well, and we give military support to a ton of countries that don't like us. So. Well, Hirohito wasn't nearly as responsible as Tojo was. I mean, the kind of cabal of military leadership between the Navy and the Army is kind of who ran Japan, Imperial Japan, leading up to and through World War II. I mean, that's what happened. Is you just had the military was kind of in charge. And you see that, a lot of that I learned actually through going through arms adoption, going through all the Nambus and things, and how the weapons were trialed, and it basically the emperor didn't get a say, and most of the government didn't get a say. It was purely the Army and the Navy, and the Army and the Navy a lot of times didn't even agree on what needed to be adopted and would adopt different things, and it just, until finally they're like, you know what, this is really causing logistical issues, we should maybe figure some of this out. So, then they started to kind of standardize a little bit on at least the machine guns. If I could get my hands on a couple of those, I would be a very happy person, because those are really, really nice light machine guns. I don't care what anybody has to say about it. The Arisakas are nice. But like, I really want a baby Nambu too. I don't know why, just mainly because I like the name, Baby Nambu. I feel like that should be the name of a panda. I know pandas are Chinese, but Baby Nambu sounds like a panda name. Just saying. What else? Got anything else? Hang on, give me a second. The plane, by the way, the Super Taco. Give me just a second here. Go here. Give me just a second. I will show you guys what that plane looks like. Here's the A29 Super Taco. I realize Super Tucano, but that's the plane. That's currently in service. It's still a prop plane. It's kind of neat. I dig it. I think it's cool. I really like prop planes, though. So, you know, that's my thing. But, yeah. So, I've been on this way longer than I ever expected to. Ooh, a 96. See, that'd be fun. The box mags kind of get me a little bit, but at the same time, like, I really like the FG42. It's kind of like the greatest man-portable machine gun ever. And the BAR, just because it's an icon, it's practically unusable and ridiculously heavy, but it's neat. But the box mag thing, man, on the Type 96s and the 92s, Type 92s, if I have that right, because they had the two, right? There was two of them, but they both have the top mounted box magazines. They're really good. They're extremely deadly. They were used to great effect on most of the islands. And I want one. Really want one. I want an Arasaka. A couple of Arasakas really bad too. In good condition, which most of them are not. But a couple of really good condition Arasakas wouldn't be too bad. I've tried to stifle my urge to really get into historical arms collecting and stuck to modern usable stuff, but there's so many really, really good, really cool historical weapons out there that, you know, being a military historian is really hard for me to resist wanting to grab up some of the really cool classics. There is actually a guy who makes a replica FG42 in semi-auto, unfortunately not full auto, but it is really, really neat. If you want a full auto FG42 though, you need at least a couple of houses to mortgage for it, because you're probably paying $100,000 for that thing. They're not common and they're really good, because it was the Fallschirmjäger who had them and they tended to use them, you know what I mean? But it's like the world's most perfect paratrooper machine gun. Like, firing it in full auto even from the shoulder is totally doable and accurately, and 20 round box mags are the only downside, but that was a necessity, you know, because it's a full powered rifle cartridge, so that's understandable. Yeah, the what is it, Type 90. Yeah, the Type 96 is a little weird, but I've always liked it. I've always kind of wanted one. Additionally, an MG42 and an MG34 would be really neat. I would almost rather an MG34 though, between MG32 or an MG32 and MG44. I would really almost have the earlier one, just because I like the way they did the setup with the receiver rotating out. And side note to anyone who doesn't know, but may in fact be a firearms aficionado, historic firearms aficionado, the reason that the Germans in World War II continued to manufacture the original MG the original MG34 and then also the MG42 side by side is because of the barrel change out. See, if you're going to change out a barrel in an MG42, it cocks to the side and the barrel comes out. And then new barrel back in and you can keep firing. Which you're going to need to do because it has a fire rate of like 1,500 rounds a minute or something ridiculous. I think it's actually like 1250. But in the case of the MG34, the entire part of the rear part of the receiver where it meets with the barrel actually rotates out of the way and the barrel can come straight back. And that wouldn't be a big issue in the case of like a infantry application, but in the case of a vehicular application where space is kind of needed to do that barrel change, being able to do it straight out, straight in is super important. So that's why they still made them both through basically the entire war. Although the other thing too is that the MG42 is a little bit simpler to produce. It has a lot more stamped steel parts and things, so it's a little bit easier. But man, that thing fires at a ridiculous fire rate. I mean, if you listen to it fire like in real life, you actually almost can't hear a difference in report from one round to the next. It's just bark. It's scary, and that is not a rotary barreled setup. That is a bolt cycling back and forth. It's roller delayed, roller locked, and it is cool. Very, very cool. I've always wanted one of those too, but again, I don't have a house to mortgage for any of these weapons ever. So that is an unfortunate thing. But I think at this point we have been live for almost 2 hours. So maximum of 2 hours is where I'm going here. Anybody else have any questions you want to ask me? Would you like to chat? Ask me questions today on Ask Andrew. Relationship advice. Relatives getting to ya. I can help. Beer recommendations. Whiskey pairings. I knew a lot of anything else, but no, nothing. All right, cool. Well, I think questions have petered out. Kind of at the end. I already went through everything. I'm gonna go ahead and call her a day, just because. Well, once I'm done with this, then it uploads to Facebook, and I can simultaneously upload it to YouTube and get that taken care of. And then that way other people can watch it too, and all like 3 people who might be interested. So this has been your Anarchist Weapons Wednesday for April 10th, 2019. Hope to see you guys in another week, and stay safe, stay real, laugh to heal, all that fun stuff. Make sure you do tune in on next Sunday for Anarchy Among Friends Roundtable Discussion, which is now on all of the major podcatchers, including Google Podcast and Spotify. And tune in next Wednesday when I'm going to go through a bunch more of the week in firearms news and other stuff that I care about for some inexplicable reason in some cases. So this Again, it's the Inked Anarchist. I'm signing off here. You guys all take care.